Spanning the nerd world and feeding your fandom.
Crash landed.
From comics to video games. From the cinematic universe to television.
This is Earth.
Connecting you to the biggest stars in the industry.
Something out there had discovered us.
It's time for the Down and Nerdy podcast. Here's your host, James Witham.
Normally you don't want to be cursed, but this is just one of those weeks. It's episode 325 of the Down and Nerdy podcast. I'm James Witham. The reason I say that is that the new series Cursed has dropped on Netflix this week, and you're going to get a chance to learn a little bit more about this magical world with director Zetna Fuentes, who was part of the show, so we'll dive deeper into it to find out why you need to be streaming this thing on Netflix throughout the week and maybe multiple times. Who knows? Also, speaking of new shows, going to be talking about The Alienist, Angel of Darkness, which is technically a follow-up to the first season of The Alienist. We'll dive into that. Plenty of nerd news, and of course, you want to talk about some great stuff that you can listen to. Yeah, Serial Box has that. If you haven't had a chance to go to serialbox.com/DNPOD yet to get that 40% off select titles, I'll tell you more about why you should be doing that this week. But we start things out with comics, as we always do. It's what we're reading next on the Down and Nerdy podcast.
My name is Bo Smith. I'm the creator of Winona Earth, and you're listening to the Down and Nerdy podcast.
Either your pull box was full or you had a lot of downloading to do this week. Whatever you're reading on, it's time for what we're reading, and that's because there were a lot of great books that dropped this week, but I've got a couple that I had my eye on, starting with Empyre #1 from Marvel Comics, and Al Ewing and Dan Slott doing the story there with the script by Al Ewing, Valerio Chitti on the art, Marte Garcia on the colors, and VC's Joe Caramagna on the letters. Great cover, too, by the way, by Jim Chung and Frank Martin. Now, there were a couple of prelude comics for this. One was Empyre Avengers #0, and there was also a Empyre Fantastic Four #0. If you did not read those prelude comics, the beginning of this book, it actually kind of spells it out pretty nicely and lays the groundwork for what's going on. I mean, sure, there's more details in those prelude issues, but if you haven't gone and read those yet and you're wondering if you needed to, I'd say you kind of don't. You get the gist of what's going on. You get kind of a synopsis of it almost in this book. So the Avengers are ready for battle with the Kree Skull Fleet on one side. And you've got the Fantastic Four on the other side, which, you know, at first I kind of thought they were with the Kree and Skrull Fleet. A little bit of a spoiler alert here. They're not really with them so much as they're trying to find out why Hulkling has joined up with the group instead of being with the Young Avengers and what their intentions really are. So this book, almost the first issue, seems like a kind of a mediation at one point or another, which is kind of interesting between the Fantastic Four and the Avengers until there's an unexpected first move that's made. And, you know, I don't spoil anything in these reviews. Let me tell you this. It was one hell of a move. And it was a shocking move. Let me tell you. I mean, and kudos to the art team, by the way. He did a wonderful job in that moment to express just how stunned everyone was and just the sheer horror of what was going on. Because it seemed like it almost seems like we were setting up for this war, right? And this was going to be this epic, you know, just all-out battle. And then all of a sudden, something happens. And it just catches everybody in the book off guard. It catches the reader off guard, quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned. And it's something that I didn't expect. And if this was the setup in the prelude issues that they had, and in the beginning of this issue, you got me. Okay, you definitely got me, because I did not see this one coming. It's actually one of the best hooks I think a Marvel first issue has had in a big event series in a long time. This one was definitely worth the wait. We were supposed to get it in April. We finally got it here in July. Empyre #1 was worth the wait. Definitely worth your time. Make sure you're grabbing this If you haven't gotten it yet because you were a little leery of whether or not you'd like this, because I know how Marvel event series can be sometimes, this is one that did not disappoint, at least in the first issue. And it'll tell you what other issues are going to be coming out as well that'll kind of tie into this if you want to go that route as well. So Empyre #1, yeah, definitely a big hit for me. I've also been waiting for this one for a long time. Snake Eyes Dead Game #1 from IDW, because we have Rob Liefeld doing the writing and the art for this one. Scripts and dialogue being handled by Chad Bowers, by the way. Adleso Corona on the ink assists there. Federico Blee on the colors and world designs on the letters. Now, with G.I. Joe, we've certainly had plenty of G.I. Joe versus Cobra stories, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. They've been plenty of good ones. But this story kind of takes a deeper look at the past of Snake Eyes and of something he's connected to, kind of whether he likes it or not, sort of thing. So it's also a present-day rescue mission, though. That's part of what this book, or at least the start of this book, is. And it's really about to turn into so much more than that, because the Joes kind of go on this mission. They don't know what exactly they're looking for or where to find it, but they know that it's there, if that makes sense. Well, it will if you've already read the issue. So suddenly there's a big surprise of who shows up in this book, first of all. A name that you'll recognize if you're a G.I. Joe fan. And then that leads to kind of legend becoming reality for Snake Eyes, or myth becoming reality, however you want to look at it. And he's in perhaps for the fight of his life, which for Snake Eyes is saying something. And I'll get back to that here in a second. But there's more to this than it appears. And he'll be joined by a few other Joes to kind of take the next step in this mission, because, I mean, it's the first issue. Of course, you're not going to have something end within one issue unless it's a one-shot. So there's plenty more where this came from. And quite frankly, I'm in for this for a lot of reasons. First of all, there's nothing wrong with being entertained again by a G.I. Joe versus Cobra story, and this could still turn into that in part. I'm not saying Cobra's not involved at all. We don't get that answer in this issue, but the story felt like a nice change of pace, quite frankly. Not only do we get a lot more Snake Eyes in this issue, and we get to learn a little bit more about Snake Eyes, we also get something that I didn't expect in the beginning of this book. The setup was done very, very well. It also helps that the art was really, really strong in this book, and I mean throughout. I mean, it was extremely detailed, one of the most detailed Joe books I've had and that I've looked at in a while. And the layout for the action sequences, actually, the way they were placed on the page and the way that they were presented, really added to my enjoyment of this book. I mean, there was a good fluidity there that I really enjoyed. The character design for the big bad is really simple, yet formidable at the same time, and it feels like a great Snake Eyes adversary. This isn't necessarily a G.I. Joe adversary. It's almost like they picture perfectly picked out an adversary for Snake Eyes that wasn't Storm Shadow, and it completely makes sense given the setup. I really, really enjoyed what they did there. So this is another winner for me. Snake Eyes Dead Game #1 from IDW. I was hoping to love it. I did. So it all works out in the end. That's going to do it for what we're reading. Up next, it's going to be talking about The Alienist, Angel of Darkness, the Season 2 premiere, technically. We'll talk about it spoiler-free next on the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
Hi, I'm Simone Missick from Marvel's Luke Cage, and you're listening to the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
Darkness has definitely fallen on late 19th century New York in the Season 2 premiere of The Alienist, Angel of Darkness on TNT. Since it hasn't aired yet, as of me recording this anyway, I'm going to go ahead and give you a spoiler-free review of the big two-part season premiere. Now, we are in New York City, 1897, with our familiar faces, which is Sarah Howard, who's played by Dakota Fanning. You've got Dr. Laszlo Chrysler, who's played by Daniel Bruhl. And then you have New York Times journalist John Moore, played by Luke Evans. And we get to see how they've taken their next steps, right? We get to see, Sarah Howard's got her own detective agency, which is pretty awesome. Laszlo still doing his thing as an alienist with a high-profile case. And you also have John Moore, who has gone from, the social columns to being a legitimate New York Times journalist. But all of the stuff, again, you get the whole, nobody necessarily takes them as seriously as they should, because one of the main things about this show for me, and I'll get to the nuts and bolts of it here in a second, is that it feels like they're being shunned for seeing the world differently than most other people see it. And I think that's a very interesting part of this series and of this premiere. Actually, their views on certain things, and by the way, there is a major protest that's a part of this first episode in this premiere, and you'll get to see how that gets dealt with and what is that and what that's about, and it just goes to show you that something can be so relevant so many years later, but for a different reason. So, and there is a catalyst to this. And I can't really get too much into it, but you do know from the description of this episode and of this season, by the way, so a little bit of a spoiler alert here if you don't know this, that the main crux of this season is that Sarah Howard was charged to investigate the kidnapping of an infant of a Spanish dignitary in the United States. And there's a reason why they end up kind of all coming together on this case that, again, I can't really spoil for you here, but you get this eerie feeling that all is not right. And here's the thing. Some of this isn't hidden, though. You can plainly see who is hindering this investigation. And you say hindering this investigation, but at the same time, you're talking about a private detective, you're talking about a journalist, and you're talking about an alienist here, right? So you're not talking about, law enforcement per se. So hindering them is not necessarily against the law. And that's the crazy thing about this. And again, you got to understand the times that you're dealing with. And that's one of the things that it makes it even harder. So it makes them even that much better at what they do. But what we do get to see in this first, in this premiere is, I got to tell you, first of all, this is one that's going to make you want to check on your kids, right? This one, I'm not going to lie, this is going to make you a little paranoid. I went and wanted to check on my little ones after watching this. And there's something that happens in this first episode that is just worst nightmare kind of gruesome. I could tell you that right now. And that is certainly nothing new for the Alienist. We saw some pretty gruesome and uncomfortable stuff in the first season. But again, it's portrayed so well. I don't say that to say that it's a bad show or it makes you turn away. It doesn't make you turn away. But it makes you see, how horrific certain things can actually be, right? And it's not afraid to really just go for it and put it right out there. There's nothing sugar-coated about this series, that's for sure. And then not only do you have this gruesome case, right, you also have another case that may or may not be tied to the whole thing. And then you've also got, we see John Moore and how he's treated as a journalist at the New York Times and how his editor is viewing his work, which is, again, different from the norm of what you would normally see run at that particular time. You get to see, obviously, Sarah Howard being a woman and trying to have her own business in 1897 New York City. You can only imagine how that worked out for her. And then you get to see Dr. Chrysler, who's kind of battling with some demons of his own in this season 2 premiere anyway. So, but when you get this group together, they just work so well off of each other. The chemistry between this cast is off the charts good. And that's one of the things that keeps me coming back to watching The Alienist. It's this cast and how they perform together. And just how it just feels like, too, that Sarah Howard is the fuel for this entire fire. As you're talking about this group, because just her determination and her unwillingness to back down and the way she just charges forward in a world that just wants to hold her back is extraordinary. And Dakota Fanning does such an amazing job with this character. I can't even tell you. And then you see, Luke Evans' character of John Moore is still very charming and is getting that determination more and more. It seems like the entire time we saw how much of an evolution that character made in the first season of The Alienist, or in the first chapter, or however you want to call it, because this isn't necessarily a season 2, but it is, sort of thing. But again, the gruesome nature of what happens here is going to make you check on your kids, going to make you hug your kids, and probably want to sleep in the same room with them, because that's how uncomfortable things get in this season 2 premiere of The Alienist. The 2-part premiere, by the way, on Sunday night, starting at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And this is one of those shows where it's going to be tough, some of the stuff that goes on there sometimes, but you're going to see historical figures that are a part of this series, which I love too. So there's nothing that kind of gets left by the wayside in history, which I think is really, really good. So we get some of that mixed in here. You get a very intriguing, albeit dark, investigation for sure. And you just get this group that just has this chemistry together that is absolutely incredible. Make sure you're watching The Alienist, Angel of Darkness, Sunday nights on TNT. This particular week is a 2-part season premiere that's going to happen on Sunday night at 9 o'clock. This week, the Down and Nerdy podcast, once again brought to you by Cereal Box. And me personally, I've been diving in to Marvel's Jessica Jones, playing with fire this week. I've been digging it so much I can't stop. I've listened to like 8 episodes in a row already. Jessica's in therapy. She's got this case that she thought was going to be an easy one, but it's never that easy when it comes to Jessica Jones, is it? And one of the things I actually love about Cereal Box is they have a collaborative writing process. So all kinds of different writers are involved in this. Avita Ayala, Zoe Quinn involved in this as well. A couple names you might know. They bring together award-winning and best-selling authors like that to create these completely original series, as well as the new content around some of these popular characters that you already know. And you can read or listen to these, by the way, at cerealbox.com or on their mobile app, which you can get at the Google Play and Apple app stores. IO9 says that it's like Game of Thrones, but for your ears, and it's kind of hard to argue with that. That's why you want to go to cerealbox.com/DNPOD. You'll get 40% off select titles like Marvel's Jessica Jones. You can also enter DNPOD. That is the promo code that you can use there. It's just, there's so many things you're going to want to add to your library. I know I've got a ton in mine, and you are going to really, whether you're a Marvel fan, whether you like just science fiction, crime noir stories, they've got a whole bunch. Go see for yourself. That's Cereal Box, SERIAL box.com/DNPod, or promo code DNPod to get 40% off select titles from Cereal Box. And just like me, you'll find plenty of obsessions to keep you busy with Cereal Box. That's going to do it for my spoiler-free review of The Alienist, Angel of Darkness premiere. Up next, there's some nerd news to discuss, and we'll dive into it. I'm James Witham, and this is the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
Hey, this is Lou Diamond Phillips from Fox's Prodigal Son, and you're listening to the Down and Nerdy Podcast.
The Star Wars prequel series just got a little bit more interesting. It's time for nerd news. The interesting part comes from a report on a rumor from LRM Online that says that Hayden Christensen might actually be reprising his role as Anakin Skywalker in the upcoming Star Wars Obi-Wan miniseries from Disney+. Not only reprising his role, but having a significant role in the miniseries. Now, again, this is just a rumor. I'm not sure what to make of it yet, of course, because I don't normally like to talk about rumors, but I have it on some authority that this source could be legit, that this could actually be something that happens. So the question is it something that you would want to happen? Part of me says yes, and part of me says no. And I'll go with the latter first, because the part of me that says no is like, okay, this was finally our chance to focus on Obi-Wan, right? The focus was finally on this character that's never really gotten a ton of focus. I mean, obviously, we learned some about him in the prequel movies. We learned even less in the original trilogy. But at the same time, it was like this was our chance to get to know this character on another level whenever this is set in the timeline, right? And now you put Anakin in this story, and suddenly, for some people anyway, the focus will shift to, well, Anakin, unfortunately. And obviously him becoming Darth Vader, if that's where they, again, decide to put it in the timeline. If Anakin's going to be a part of this story, you got to feel like it's going to be post-Revenge of the Sith, right? And I was kind of on the, what happened to Obi-Wan, what made him want to go into exile, what were his next moments right after the events of Revenge of the Sith, what was happening there. I was kind of hoping we'd get a little bit of that. And now if you have Anakin, who of course is going to be, ripe for revenge if this is the case. And again, we don't really know much on the storyline or the timeline of when this is going to take place, but I'm worried that the focus is going to be on the wrong character if you do this. But at the same time, there's a cool factor there too, right? Because then maybe that's what the series should be about in part, right? Because that is a major event that has happened. And do they end up coming face to face again? And is that why Obi-Wan needs to go into hiding more than anything else? Does he go into seclusion because of a showdown with Anakin further on down the line? So just a couple of different things to think about there. I mean, you're either going to be excited or you aren't. Again, I know that the prequels are not everyone's cup of tea, to be putting it mildly, so I'm not sure if this is something you'd want to see, but everybody seems to want to see Obi-Wan no matter what. Hopefully it does start up production January of 2021 like it's supposed to, if it is safe. Quickly, there was another bit of Star Wars news that announced this week. It's going to be kind of a spin-off to Star Wars, the Clone Wars animated series, and that was announced on StarWars.com, that Star Wars The Bad Batch is going to be a new animated series, CG animated series coming to Disney+. And basically, yes, it is members of the Bad Batch, which you saw in Season 7 of Star Wars The Clone Wars. It's a unique squadron of clones who vary genetically from their brothers in the clone army. So it's kind of like the Misfits. But they're going to be basically mercenaries and, work for hire type of situation, it seems like. And to me, the reason I'm excited about this is we could see an expansion of the galaxy now. We could see parts of the Star Wars universe that we've yet to see. And again, a galaxy is a vast thing. I think that that's something that kind of gets lost in science fiction, right? Is that a galaxy is not a small thing. So if we're talking about their mercenaries across the galaxy, then you're telling me that I might be able to see something that I haven't seen before. And that's definitely something Star Wars needs to try to do a little bit more of. We got to see that a little bit in The Mandalorian, and how did that work out? As a matter of fact, there's going to be a bunch of folks from behind the scenes of The Mandalorian. They're going to be working on this as well. And actually, Agnes Chu, who's the Senior Vice President of Content at Disney+, has actually said that the relationship with Lucasfilm Animation, quote, is only beginning. Again, animation's not necessarily a pandemic-proof way to be able to put on a show, but animation has certainly seemed to have been able to move forward while things are going on. So I think we're going to see a lot more animated series, and I think that especially in the world of Star Wars, you could do so much with animation, and with the popularity of the Clone Wars, why wouldn't you want to capitalize on that and keep some sort of a story going? And when you're talking about mercenaries, if you do this right, it could be a really, really entertaining series. So no release date yet. I'll keep you posted on that, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what they have to offer. Speaking of things that may or may not be offered, and I rolled my eyes at this a little bit. At the last minute, apparently New Mutants, yes, the New Mutants movie that may or may never happen. We don't even know at this point. But New Mutants has announced a panel for Comic-Con at home this coming Thursday. I got to tell you, at this point, if you're not going to give me a release date on either Disney Plus or Hulu or something of that nature, then why are we even doing this, right? We have no idea when we'll actually be able to see a movie again in a movie theater. No clue. And I know you might be chiming in and saying, oh, I've gotten to see one, my state opened up, blah, blah. Okay. I understand that. And that's great for you if you wanted to go to the movies. But here's the deal. You don't do this unless you have some actionable news, right? I know that this is supposed to be in theaters on August the 28th. Does anybody see that happening? Like anybody? So on Thursday, July 23rd at 2 p.m., when we actually get this Comic-Con at home panel, I had better hear that this is being released on Disney Plus or on Hulu. Otherwise, what is the point? This is the movie. It's the tease that keeps on teasing, and that's the frustrating part. And you're going to have members of the cast that are a part of this panel, like Anya Taylor-Joy. You're going to have Maisie Williams is going to be there. You're also going to have Henry Zaga is going to be a part of it. So, and a bunch of others. Here's the deal: just let this movie come out already. Either to have fans be surprised at how good it is, or to put it out of its misery, one or the other. Because we have waited long enough for New Mutants. And think about it. Disney decided when they put Hamilton on Disney Plus, that was a power move, because whether you think so or not, Hamilton would have printed money at the box office. I mean, printed it. It would have been a big hit. I know you're thinking, oh, well, people saw it on Broadway. Not really. Not everybody. People in New York did, but not everybody. And who's to say they wouldn't go see it again, being able to see it in the movie theater? You can't be small-minded enough to think that something's not going to work out just because you've already seen it or you think it's not going to work. Hamilton would have made big bucks at the box office, but they decided that they were going to do this now. Why not make the same decision for New Mutants? Why not make the same decision that you did for Hamilton or Artemis Fowl? Because those were, at least in Artemis Fowl's case, I felt like they had a lack of confidence in that movie. Now, if they really do have a lack of confidence in New Mutants, and that's what has seemed to plague this movie from the very beginning, right? And again, there's no actual knowledge there, but that's the impression you get. Then why not just put it out on Disney Plus? Take your lumps and move on with your life, right? Let this movie go away, because if you don't release it at some point, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. I don't understand what they're waiting for. And you want to keep delaying things and hoping movie theaters open up? That could be a risky little game, especially the more and more you read, the more and more you realize that there is a possible very dark future for movies inside of theaters. Hopefully this is not the case for Black Adam, though, because the Dwayne Johnson-led movie is supposed to be coming out in 2021, if I'm not mistaken there. So we actually finally have more casting news other than Black Adam himself. This comes from The Hollywood Reporter, that Noah Centineo is actually going to play Atom Smasher in the upcoming movie. Now, remember, Noah Centineo was supposed to play He-Man in the Masters of the Universe movie. It looks like that's been put on hold. So, you got a spot open. And enter Atom Smasher in the world of the Black Adam movie. Now, it's interesting that we get that, and we don't get another character. But remember, it's not like Atom Smasher is brand new. Obviously, Atom Smasher has a history in the comics. Has even, had tie-ins with Black Adam in the comics before. Also, you have the fact that Atom Smasher was in Season 2 of The Flash in the Season 2 premiere. Remember, Adam Copeland, Edge played him. So it's not like Atom Smasher is going to be a complete surprise to fans. But you get somebody like Noah Centineo to play him, and he's a rising star. That's a pretty big deal, I think. So I think that Atom Smasher's going to play a much bigger role in this movie than you might think, just given the circumstances. We also found out that Dwayne Johnson's going to reteam with Jaume Collet-Serra, who is the director of Jungle Cruise, which Johnson is also in, and going to be directing this Black Adam movie as well. So does that mean that we're going to get some more, similar casting or very friendly faces? They're going to be joining this movie. We're in very much a wait-and-see approach on pretty much everything right now. But, I mean, Adam Smasher being involved in this movie, this gives you another powerhouse to look at and take seriously, or not, quite frankly. And it's somebody that can match up with Black Adam. Obviously, you feel like Black Adam wins that in the end, right? Of course. But at the same time, it's nice to actually have some news to talk about coming as it comes to this movie, because we got almost nothing for the longest time. Now we've gotten a little bit of stuff, so hopefully we find out more about what's going on with that with DC Fandom coming up at the end of August. There was another animated series that was announced this week, and this one I feel like has been a long time coming, and this time it is Netflix making it happen. A new CGI animated series is going to be happening for Usagi Yojimbo. And I know fans are thinking, finally, this is a character that's been in the Ninja Turtles shadow, is what seems like forever. So 35 years of comic book history are finally going to be put on the screen in his own series with Samurai Rabbit, the Usagi Chronicles. That is what the show is going to be called. And yes, Stan Sakai, who created the character, is going to be involved in this, so no worries there. Dark Horse Entertainment going to be involved as well. Atomic Monster, you want to look those up. That means James Wan, by the way, is going to be involved in this, just in case you weren't sure exactly. You'll also have the 88 Pictures, which worked on Fast and Furious Spy Racers for Netflix. They're going to do the CGI animation, and it actually takes place in the far future. That's when this is going to take place. So I think that this has been a very long time coming, and this is a character that is very interesting, and of course has a lot of storied history, and it makes you wonder, what freaking took so long to make this happen, right? That's the thing that drives me nuts. It's like, this is a character that's been there for a while, and we've seen him in other things, but never really the spotlight on Usagi, right? And now we're finally going to get that very justly deserved spotlight. And I can't wait to see where this goes. I think we're going to be waiting a while for this one, though. I mean, if the Cyberpunk series that I talked about a couple weeks ago isn't coming out until 2022, I can't imagine that this will come out that much sooner unless they want to try and rush it, which rushing is never a good thing. And I'm not sure you want to rush this because, quite frankly, this is something that could have a long-standing future, and I think Netflix realizes that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed up for this. So, knowing that there is a long-standing future possible there, and I mean, you're talking about action comedy, so that could, certainly be something that's for parents and for kids as well. I would keep my eye on this one. I'll keep an eye on a release date for you, but this might actually be coming out sooner rather than later. Not anytime soon, but sooner than you might expect. That's going to do it for Nerd News. Up next, speaking of Netflix, going to talk about the new series Cursed, which just dropped today. Going to be talking to the director of the first 2 episodes at Zetna Fuentes. Joining me next on the Down and Nerdy podcast.
Hey guys, it's Larissa Tronco from Netflix's The Order, and you're listening to the Down and Nerdy podcast.
Just yet another Netflix series that I've been looking forward to so much ever since I saw that first trailer. It's Cursed, and there's so many great things about it. And if you're jumping right in the beginning, why not talk to the director of the first 2 episodes at Zetna Fuentes? Zetna, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Zetna, you've actually worked on several award-winning TV series in your career. What was it about Cursed that made you interested in working on this series?
Oh, there were a few really amazing elements of this project that really made me want to jump in. First when I found out who created the book series and who was creating the TV series, Tom Wheeler and Frank Miller, it's super excited and wanted to do anything I could to work with them. And then when I read the script, I thought, this is a story that I really want to tell. It takes this legend, this Arthurian legend that I'm, fascinated by, have been since a kid, and taking, the Lady of the Lake and doing her coming of age story. And I thought, this is a really fresh take, and I want to be a part of this.
Now, you actually, like I said, directed the first 2 episodes of the series. What was the most important thing you wanted to do in making a first impression on this potential audience?
I think for me, it's always about the story and the main characters. And I think that in establishing the world, there's so much to do, visually and tonally. And I think that all of those are obviously, incredibly important. But if you are not invested in your protagonist and their relationships, then, I think everything else has come secondary. So for me, it was really about establishing Nimue, our hero, and what was at stake for her, and all the nuance and the subtleties of her character, so that an audience would be compelled to watch and be pulled into the world.
We actually learned a lot about her, actually, in the first couple of episodes. What were your first impressions of the character when you first started working on the series? I
kept, reading the script over and over again and the book, and really, I loved that she felt very human, although she's Fae, but, her flaws and her outlook on the world and what she wanted from herself and her family and her community just felt something like I could relate to, and resonated with me. And I thought that, she was worthy of this hero treatment. I thought, here's a young woman who is struggling with all of these issues and needs to find the courage to protect herself and her family and her people. And I thought, I was very moved by that.
I feel like Katherine Langford really brought sort of a vulnerability to the role that really stood out in these first couple of episodes. What made her the perfect choice for this role?
I couldn't agree more. I think she's really tremendous. I wish I could take credit for her casting, but she was cast already when I came on, and I was ecstatic because I had seen her in 13 Reasons Why, and I was already a fan of her work. And I think she brought so many other layers and colors that I couldn't have even thought of in the beginning. That vulnerability that you just mentioned, a heroic quality, a sensitivity, a strength. She just brought it all.
Zetna, one of the performances to me when I first started watching the series that stood out was Gustaf Skarsgard's Merlin. What was it like working with him on that performance, and were you hoping that this would kind of feel like a Merlin that fans hadn't seen before?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just over the moon when Gustaf was being considered for the role. Again, I knew his work. I was a fan of his work, and he just took that character of Merlin and made something so special. The script had written this character that was a completely different version of Merlin than we had ever imagined. And then when Gustaf started to bring it to life, he just filled it with so much, so many more things than we could have ever hoped for. And he's this very different Merlin, and I just can't ever stop watching him.
Yeah, you and me both. I can tell you that right now.
Right?
I love that performance so much. So much. We're talking to Zetna Fuentes, the director of the first 2 episodes of Curse, which you can see right now on Netflix. Now, Zetna, when you're working with elements of magic, and of course certain non-human characters is the best way that I could possibly put it, the effects are usually done in post-production. Now, as a director, what is the key to making those scenes as realistic as possible in working with your actors while you're on the set in the moment?
So yeah, it's a really big challenge. I think the first thing was that we had all had these early conversations about how we were going to try and do as much practically as possible, because it felt really right for the story and the tone that we were setting. We wanted our magic to feel like it was organic and coming from nature, and it could be subtle where it needed to be and then dramatic where it needed to be. So in an effort to do that, we created hopefully a working environment that had as many practical elements as possible, and then a lot of planning for all the VFX that we were going to need to augment. And so, planning with VFX supervisors and all the artists involved and cinematographer and production designer, just making sure that everyone had the same vision going forward, so that when we got into post, it all meshed, correctly.
Do you feel like adding more practical effects? Because I actually feel like I saw quite a few. Do you feel like that added more of an authenticity to the series early on, to tell the viewers, okay, this isn't just going to be some big CGI series?
Yeah, I really hope so. That was our intent, was to make it as visceral of an experience as possible, grounded in nature, grounded in these elemental forces of, lightning and rain and fire, and we really wanted it to feel like, of course, magic exists because we've set the stage for it to exist in a very, hopefully organic and practical way.
Absolutely. Now, other than Nimue, I'm not sure any other character made the instant first impression that Daniel Sherman's Weeping Monk did in this series. So how much would you say we get to learn about him early on for those who haven't started watching yet? And how important was it for you to have him make such an impact early on as that character?
We loved the idea of giving that character this, epic intro. We talked about it very early on. It was in the script, and then we just, went with it, that we thought this is a character worthy of, this kind of treatment. And so it just felt like it needed to be that, you needed to meet this, what we call it, the boogeyman in this way. We wanted it to feel really just epic in nature.
I can tell you right now, the trailer didn't do it justice. I'll be honest, because when I saw it, and when I saw it in the episodes, I'm like, wow, usually it's the trailer that makes you go, I got to see this bad guy. And instead it was the first 2 episodes of the series where I was like, whoa, look out for this guy.
Oh, that's great. That's exactly what we wanted.
There you go. Well, it worked out, at least for me anyway, and I'm sure for many others as well. Now, Zetna, are there any characters in this series that you kind of wish you had the opportunity to work with more, that you didn't really get to work with in these first couple of episodes?
Oh, that's such a great question. I'm so greedy with my actors and my story, and I did the first 2 episodes, which was amazing, and I couldn't work on more, although we tried to make that work schedule-wise. So, for example, when we meet, Igraine or Sister Iris, those were 2 actors and 2, that I think crushed their roles. And I was a little bit involved in the casting process, and I was so sad that I didn't get a chance to work with either of them, just one tiny piece with, Shalom, who plays Igraine.
I got to tell you, I think Billy Jenkins did a heck of a job, too. That was the character. I'm like, yeah, I got to see more of this kid.
Oh man, at least I had a few scenes with Billy, and we got to establish his character, because that little man, I cannot express my love enough for him. He's such a talent, such a joy, and he's really good. He's a really good actor.
And that's like one of the first impressions that you get of the series too. I'm like, oh, we got to watch out for this kid. I like him.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Now, Zetna, before I let you go, you can't have a story of Arthurian legend without the sword. There's a line in the trailer, actually, I don't know if I have this word for word or not, where it says, this is a sword that can get you noticed. So what makes the story of this particular sword so unique?
So we had endless conversations about this sword. And, we, again, because we were creating this world that felt grounded and naturalistic with its, magic, its lyrical magic, we wanted the sword to feel that way. We wanted it to feel special, but not kind of hokey special, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Not, when it was revealed, it didn't want to pull us out of the world that we had created, but we wanted to give it its due and its importance and treat it like it was a major character of the story. And that was our intent. Every time we had the sword was in a scene, it felt like it was an actor on the page. We wanted to treat it with that much reverence because it's Excalibur.
No doubt about it. And you'll get to learn a lot more about that sword and about these characters if you're watching Cursed on Netflix. All 10 episodes available right now. And hers are the ones that give you that first impression. It's director Zetna Fuentes. Thank you so much for joining me this week.
Oh, thank you. Really, really a pleasure. Thanks so much.
See, that's the thing for me about Cursed, too, is that it just doesn't feel like your typical Arthurian legend. It doesn't feel like your typical story of magic. There's so much going on in this series, and it's the characters, I think, that really bring it out and make it different from what you've normally seen, and you'll have to see for yourself. Watch all the characters of Cursed. 10 episodes available right now on Netflix. I think you're going to fall in love with it just as much as I did. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Down and Nerdy Podcast. Again, thanks to Zetna Fuentes for joining me this week and the folks at Netflix for letting me talk about Cursed. If you want more about this show and other shows as well, go to downandnerdypodcast.com. Make sure you're supporting this week's sponsor, Cereal Box. That's serialbox.com/DNPOD or promo code DNPOD. You get 40% off those select titles. You can also find out more on social media at Down and Nerdy 757 on Twitter and on Instagram, and at Down and Nerdy on Facebook. Remember, you never have to apologize for being a nerd, so let your fan flag fly and be good to your fellow nerds.